And what we have at this point in time is a tussle in the South. If you got the federal government imposing control and giving blacks economic, social, and political freedom, then the South is going to respond. And very clearly they respond with the KKK. It's a terrorist organization that will, in fact, deny blacks their rights. So what you have from 1867 on in the South is a fight between Southerners seeking to subjugate blacks and the Northern government seeking to protect those blacks. And the force acts, the enforcement acts, or force acts as they're known, were there as criminalizing behavior in the South, making certain behavior in the South a federal government crime in order to stop the actions of individual Southerners who are seeking to take away African Americans' rights through the terrorist organization of the KKK. That case goes on and it's fought out. Now, very smartly, the South says, what's the best way around this? Let's get rid of the 14th Amendment, which gives constitutional protection to African Americans. And the slaughterhouse cases are those cases which were brought by the South to say the 14th Amendment is in fact not enforceable because it denies constitutional rights. And it's an amazing set of cases where the South says you actually don't have protection against state government action. You actually don't have protection as an individual under equal protection of the law or under due process rights against what Georgia or South Carolina or Florida wants to do to you. Now, the slaughterhouse cases come from, I believe, Louisiana, but it doesn't matter. What the South does and what the Supreme Court does in support of the South is take a knife and eviscerate, cut the guts out of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment becomes a non-entity constitutionally because the Supreme Court says we don't want to protect black people. They're not important enough to protect. So the slaughterhouse cases will essentially take away the 14th Amendment's power to protect blacks in the South. There's also a Cruikshank decision which takes away the 15th Amendment. Now, remember, 14th Amendment says citizens and you have these rights, and you can't deny those rights because there's equal protection of law and due process. Well, were blacks actually being allowed to vote in the South? No. So what we do in the 15th Amendment is say you can't deny the right to vote on the basis of a person's national background, of a person's race. And so we protect voting rights under the 15th Amendment. So know the three amendments that stem from Reconstruction. No slavery, citizenship for all, which denies the state's ability to take away your rights under equal protection and due process, and then voting rights. Again, Supreme Court takes a knife and slashes the guts out of Cruikshank and says you ain't gonna do anything with that. And therefore, what we have is Reconstruction dying, but dying very surely and very slowly over the course of the 10 years it's in operation. Ask yourself, as a historian, why is it that we allow Reconstruction to fail? And there's some very clear, easy answers that you want to think about front. Number one, it's the federal government imposing itself on our personal lives. And we don't like that. Number two, it's a bunch of Northerners willing and able to fight for Southern blacks. There's only a limit to the amount of good we want to do for other people. And then number three, you have organized resistance on the part of the South against fighting for their liberty against what they see as a tyrannical federal government. So you have a variety of issues there saying we're not really going to spend all that much time and effort to make sure that black people in the South are going to have their protections that we fought a civil war for. And the final coup de grace, the final end of Reconstruction, will be the election of 1876. Because we have a contested election. Republicans, pro-black rights, and Democrats, pro-Southern, are going to fight it out. Extraordinarily close election in 1876. We've had two terms of Grant, the Republican. Tilden, the Democrat, will be within one electoral vote of victory when the Republicans go, wait a second, we're looking at some of these returns from the South, and there are 3 states that we think actually voted for Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican. And the Republicans are going to go, these 3 states, Democrats deny blacks the right to vote. We think the returns are these. The South, the Democrats will go, we think the returns are these. And these 3 states will send 2 sets of returns for their electoral colleges to Washington, D.C. And we're sitting in Washington, D.C. in January of 1877 and going, well, which set of returns from the state are we going to believe? The Republican ones, which give it to Rutherford B. Hayes, or the Democratic ones that give it to Samuel Tilden? And we don't resolve it. We don't resolve it in January. We don't resolve it in February. We don't resolve it in March. We don't resolve it until the very middle of March when there's a compromise. And Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican, will get the presidency. And in return, the South, the Democrats, get an end of Reconstruction. And so in 1877, with the compromise of 1877, we end Reconstruction, we give the states back to the South, and the states will impose their control on black people, and the federal government says, we're done. We're not going to protect black people anymore in the South. We have a Republican president. And what we see happening from 1877 on are what are called Jim Crow laws. And the Jim Crow laws are state legislation to impose social, economic, and political control over black people. And those Jim Crow laws segregate purposefully against blacks. Those Jim Crow laws discriminate purposefully against blacks. And they will deny the freedom we fought the Civil War to find, to give, to provide for African Americans. So the freedmen, by dint of the Jim Crow laws, have lost their economic, political, and social opportunity to be a part of the United States. That segregation, that discrimination will actually be upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States in the second most abominable decision of our Supreme Court ever. And that's in 1894 with Plessy v. Ferguson, which said separate is equal. Black people don't need to have the same opportunity because they can do their own opportunity. And be it in a public restroom, be it in a restaurant, be it on a train, black people can ride their own train, black people can go to their own restaurant. We can discriminate purposefully against black people, and we can segregate black people, and it's all constitutional. That, along with Dred Scott, Plessy v. Ferguson, along with Dred Scott, is an abomination, and it goes against every single tenet that was written into the 14th Amendment. But what it allows, black people don't have rights in America, in the American South, and it's legitimized by state law. Reconstruction, rights for African Americans, sorry, didn't happen. What was the true nature of Reconstruction? Why didn't Reconstruction work? And what's the result for the South of this time period?